the small research outpost on Nix. 7 was quiet as Dr. Keltoran hunched over his desk. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he studied the holographic images floating before him. Cave paintings, primitive but clear, showed tall bipedal figures descending from the sky. The native Nixians, with their 6 limbs and scaled bodies, were drawn small beside these visitors from the stars. Playing with fairy tales again, Kel? Dr. Zelmerich stood at the doorway, her skin shifting to a mocking shade of blue. Like all Arvani, her mood displayed itself through the color of her translucent outer layer. "These aren't fairy tales," Keltoran said, not looking up. 17 worlds, Zell. 17 different planets with nearly identical depictions of these beings. The timing matches, too, all from roughly the same period, about 300 cycles ago. "Ah, yes, your famous humans," she said, making air quotes with her upper limbs. "The magical creatures who breathe toxins, drink poison, and can survive in almost any environment. Next you'll tell me they shoot laser beams from their eyes." Keltoran's skin flushed orange with frustration. "Mock all you want. The evidence is becoming harder to ignore." Zelmerich's color softened to a more conciliatory purple. "The collective has cataloged over 4,000 sentient species, Kel. Not one matches these humans of yours. The Academic Council has reviewed your findings 3 times now. These are just primitive interpretations of natural phenomena, or perhaps visitors from already known species. Then why has every reference to them been scrubbed from our historical archives? I found mentions in ancient texts, then nothing, as if someone systematically removed them." "Not this conspiracy again," Zelmerich sighed. "I'm concerned about you, old friend. You're risking your reputation on myths." After she left, Keltoran returned to his work. For 15 years, he had been piecing together the puzzle, the Arvani Collective, spanning nearly a quarter of the galaxy with thousands of member species, kept meticulous records of every civilization they encountered. Yet these humans appeared only in folk tales, cave paintings, and a handful of ancient references that had somehow escaped deletion. He pulled up another image, crude drawings from the forest dwellers of Turk's Prime, showing bipedal figures healing the sick with mysterious devices. On Kaldar, ancient poems describe visitors with skin like the moons and eyes of various waters who taught irrigation techniques during a devastating drought. The evidence was fragmentary, but consistent. A species called humans had visited numerous worlds centuries ago, made contact, sometimes helped the locals, and then vanished. And strangest of all, the collective's otherwise complete records contained not a single official mention of them. The next morning, Keltoran was jolted awake by the sound of his communication device. The face of Director Vash appeared, his skin an alarming shade of yellow-green. "Keltoran, report to the observatory immediately," the director said, without preamble. "What's happened?" Keltoran asked, already pulling on his work robes. "Just get here. Now." 30 minutes later, Keltoran stood with a dozen other researchers, staring at the main viewing screen. It showed a section of space at the edge of their detection range. There, moving with purpose, was a fleet of ships unlike any in the collective's database. "We detected them 2 hours ago," Director Vash said. "They're using some kind of propulsion system we've never seen before. Their energy signatures don't match any known species." "Where are they headed?" someone asked. "Here," Vash replied. "They're on a direct course for Nix 7. Keltoran felt his skin rippling with shades of excitement and vindication. "Have you tried communicating with them?" "Yes, using all standard protocols." "No response yet." "Let me try something," Keltoran said, moving to the communication station. His fingers flew over the controls as he pulled up a file from his personal research. "This is a language pattern I reconstructed from the fragments I've been studying. If these are who I think they are..." He sent a message, a simple greeting in what he believed might be a human language, and waited. The room fell silent. 2 minutes passed. Then 5. "This is a waste of dash," Director Vash began, but was cut off by a chime from the communication system. The screen flickered, and a face appeared. It had 2 eyes, a small nose, and a mouth with flat teeth. Its skin was a solid tin color that didn't shift or change. When it spoke, The words matched the patterns Keltoran had been studying for years. "This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the Earth Expeditionary Vessel Horizon. We are approaching your system with peaceful intentions. We request permission to establish formal diplomatic contact with your world." Keltoran's skin flashed so many colors at once that several colleagues stepped back in alarm. "I knew it," he whispered. "Humans are real." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. The collective central government was thrown into chaos by the appearance of a human fleet. Emergency sessions were called. Military vessels were dispatched to Nix 7. Keltoran found himself suddenly promoted from ridiculed researcher to vital expert, rushed into briefings with collective officials who had dismissed his work for years. "What do we know about their capabilities?" demanded High Counselor Jevnair, his skin a wary orange. "Very little," Keltoran admitted. "The stories suggest they are remarkably adaptable. They can survive in environments that would kill most species. They're physically stronger than they appear. Their technology was advanced centuries ago. It may be far beyond ours now." "Are they dangerous?" another counselor asked. Keltoran hesitated. "The stories are mixed. There are tales of human kindness, of them healing the sick and teaching new skills. But there are also accounts of their ferocity when threatened. One ancient text from Corlinfor says, 'Their peaceful hand and their war hand are equally skilled, and they choose which to extend.'" As the human fleet drew closer, panic spread through some segments of collective. News broadcasts debated whether this was a first contact or a return. Keltoran's previously ignored research was suddenly the most accessed data in the collective's networks. "They're entering orbit," announced the sensor operator at Nix 7 Space Control Center. On the screens, they watched as 7 large vessels and numerous smaller craft took up positions around the planet. Their design was unlike anything the collective, sleek, angular ships with a distinctive blue glow emanating from what must be their propulsion systems. "They're hailing us again," the communications officer said. The face of Captain Lisa Morgan appeared once more. "We are establishing standard orbit and request permission to send a small delegation to the surface. We come in peace and friendship." Before anyone could respond, an alert sounded. A fleet of collective military vessels had arrived in the system, taking up aggressive positions near the human ships. "What are they doing?" Keltoran demanded. "We need to tell them to stand down." Director Vash shook his head. "Those orders came directly from Central Command. They're taking precautionary measures." On the screen, they could see Captain Morgan receiving information from someone off camera. Her expression remained calm, but her posture stiffened. "We are aware of your military vessels taking position around our fleet," she said. "We understand your caution, but assure you our intentions are peaceful. To demonstrate this, we are powering down our defensive systems." The sensor operators confirmed this was true. The human ships had indeed lowered their shields and weapon systems. Why would they do that? Director Vash wondered aloud. "If our ships fired now?" "Because they're showing trust," Keltoran said. "Or at least the appearance of it. They're giving us a choice about how this first meeting goes." After tense communications between Nix 7 and Central Command, a compromise was reached. The humans would be permitted to send a single shuttle to the planet's surface. The meeting would take place at the research outpost, away from major population centers. Keltoran stood with a small reception committee as the human shuttle descended from the sky. It was smaller than he had expected, with smooth lines and the same blue glow as the larger ships. The craft landed gently on the designated pad. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a door slid open, and a ramp extended to the ground. 3 figures emerged. They walked on 2 legs, just as the ancient drawings had depicted. They wore dark blue uniforms with insignia on their shoulders and chests. Their skin tones varied, one light beige, one brown, one a rich dark color. Their hair differed too, black, blonde, and red. Keltoran felt his skin cycling through colors of awe and excitement. After 15 years of being dismissed as a chaser of myths, he was about to meet the subjects of his research in person. The central figure stepped forward. It was Captain Morgan, recognizable from the communications. Up close, she looked both more and less alien than Keltoran had imagined. There was something almost Arvani-like in her expressions, yet her solid skin color and rigid posture seemed strange. "On behalf of Earth and humanity," she said, her voice clear in the translator, "I extend greetings to the Arvani Collective." Director Vash stepped forward, his skin a formal shade of deep blue. "On behalf of the collective, I welcome you to Nix 7. Morgan smiled, a gesture Keltoran recognized from his research as indicating friendliness. Then her eyes found him in the group. "You must be Dr. Keltoran," she said. "Your message was what allowed us to confirm we had the right language patterns. I understand you've been studying evidence of human contact for some time." Keltoran's skin flushed pink with pride. "Yes, Captain. Though until today, most consider my work to be the study of myths rather than history." "Well, Doctor," said Morgan, "it seems your myths just entered orbit, and we have much to discuss about why our previous encounters with your people have been erased from your records." Behind them, the sun was setting over Nix 7, casting long shadows across the landing pad. Above, visible in the darkening sky, the lights of the human fleet shone like new stars. Stories made real. The legends had returned. Captain Lisa Morgan stood before the viewport on the bridge of the horizon, watching the blue-green surface of Nix 7 rotate slowly beneath them. After 20 years in Earth space service, she had visited dozens of worlds, but first contact mission still filled her with a mixture of excitement and caution. "Captain," said Ben Reeves, the communications officer, "we're receiving another transmission from the collective fleet. They're requesting that we limit our surface delegation to 5 individuals and provide detailed biological data on each." Lisa frowned. "Tell them we've already agreed to 3 representatives as a show of good faith, and remind them that we transmitted basic human biological data 6 hours ago." "This is a 3rd repeat request," Ben noted. "I think they're stalling." Lisa nodded. She had suspected as much. The Arvani Collective's initial reaction to their arrival had been a puzzling mix of surprise, confusion, and what seemed like institutional panic. Their military response had been swift but uncoordinated, suggesting their command structure was struggling with the situation. "Dr. Wright." Lisa called to the woman studying cultural data at a nearby console. "What's your assessment?" Dr. Olivia Wright looked up from her work. As the expedition's lead cultural specialist, she had spent years studying the limited information Earth had gathered about the collective through long-range observation and occasional covert visits. "They're definitely in disarray," she said. "Based on Dr. Keltoran's communications, I believe we're dealing with society that has deliberately erased knowledge of previous human contact. The current leadership may be genuinely shocked by our existence. Or they knew about us all along and hoped we'd never return," added Commander Joe Martinez, the ship's security chief. His expression was grim. "We should consider the possibility that there's a reason they wanted to forget us." Lisa considered this. Earth's early exploratory missions, centuries ago, had operated under different protocols. Those crews had made contact with numerous species, including several now part of the collective, before Earth's government had established a non-interference policy. What had those early encounters been like? And why would records of them be systematically erased? Whatever the reason, Lisa decided, we proceed as planned. Dr. Wright, Commander Martinez, you'll accompany me to the surface in 1 hour. Ben, inform the collective we're sticking to our original arrangement. As her officers returned to their duties, Lisa touched a small insignia on her collar. Earth's United Space Command emblem. After centuries of careful expansion and observation, humanity had finally decided it was time to step onto the galactic stage openly. This mission would set the tone for everything that followed. She just hoped they were ready. On the surface of Nix 7, Dr. Keltoran paced nervously in the meeting chamber that had been hastily prepared for the human delegation. Collective officials had been arriving all morning. Scientists, military officers, and government representatives, all demanding briefings on his research. Your reports indicate these humans breathe oxygen, but can tolerate atmospheric variations that would kill most species, said General Vor, his skin a militant red. Is this accurate? Based on historical accounts, yes, Keltoran replied. The stories consistently describe humans as remarkably adaptable. And their technology, weapons capabilities. Keltoran's skin flickered with annoyance. As I've explained repeatedly, I don't have that information. My research focused on historical evidence of their existence, not military assessments. The general's color darkened. Then you failed in your duty to the collective. My duty? Keltoran's skin flashed bright orange. For 15 years, I've been trying to bring this evidence to the collective's attention, and for 15 years, I've been dismissed and ridiculed. Now the humans have appeared on our doorstep. Suddenly my research is vital? Perhaps if the collective had taken me seriously sooner, we would be better prepared for this moment. Before General Vor could respond, Director Vash entered the room. The human shuttle has been cleared for landing. They'll be here in 20 minutes. General, a word in private, please. As the two officials stepped away, Keltoran moved to a window overlooking the landing pad. In the distance, he could see collective military vessels positioned around the research outpost. The display of force worried him. After centuries of being merely stories, humans were about to become very real to the collective. How that first meeting went would shape everything that followed. In the shuttle descending to Nix 7, Dr. Olivia Wright reviewed her notes one final time. As a xenoanthropologist specializing in non-human cultures, she had spent her career preparing for this moment. Nervous? Asked Commander Martinez, noticing her rapid scrolling through data. Excited, she corrected. We've studied the collective from afar for decades, but there's only so much you can learn that way. Actually speaking with them, seeing how they react to us in person, this is invaluable data. Lisa, seated across from them, smiled slightly. Just remember, we're not just here to study them. We're here to establish a relationship. A relationship they seem to have deliberately forgotten, Martinez noted. Which makes our job more complex, Lisa acknowledged. But also more important. Something happened in the past that led to the situation. We need to understand what, without repeating whatever mistakes might have been made. The shuttle shuddered slightly as it entered the planet's lower atmosphere. Through the viewport, they could see the sprawling research outpost where they would land. It was surrounded by lush purple vegetation, alien, yet somehow familiar in its forest-like density. Their shuttle technology is surprisingly basic. The pilot called back. Their guidance systems barely interact with ours. It's like they're a century behind us technologically. Or their technology developed along different paths, Olivia suggested. Don't make assumptions based on Earth standards. The shuttle touched down gently on the designated landing pad. Lisa stood, straightening her uniform. Remember the mission, she said to her team. We're here to open diplomatic channels, not to intimidate or judge. We observe, we learn, and we build trust. Earth has waited centuries for this moment. Let's make it count. The first meeting went better than Keltoran had feared. After initial formalities in the main chamber, the human delegation had been escorted to a smaller conference room for direct discussions. General Vor and several military officials had been excluded at Director Vash's insistence, leading to a tense but quieter exchange. Captain Morgan spoke with directness that some Arvani found unsettling. Her skin never changed color to indicate her emotions, a trait shared by all humans, apparently, making her harder to read. But her words were clear and her manner respectful. Earth has been aware of the collective for approximately 300 of our years, she explained. Our early exploratory missions made contact with several worlds that later became collective members. After those initial encounters, Earth's government established stricter protocols about interference with developing civilizations. Yet you're here now, noted Counselor Jevenar, who had arrived from the collective capital. What changed? We've been watching the collective's expansion. You've reached a level of development where formal diplomatic contacts seemed appropriate. We believe both our civilizations could benefit from open relations. Keltoran noticed how carefully she avoided mentioning the apparent erasure of previous human contacts from collective records. A diplomatic choice, but the question hung in the air nonetheless. Dr. Wright, the human cultural specialist, spoke next. We've prepared information packages about Earth and humanity that we hope will facilitate understanding between our peoples. We're particularly interested in cultural exchange. As the meeting continued, Keltoran found himself studying the humans closely. They were smaller than he had imagined from the ancient depictions. The average Arvani stood a head taller, but there was a density to them, a physical presence that suggested strength. Their facial expressions were subtle but varied, compensating somewhat for their unchanging skin color. The most surprising thing was how ordinary they seemed. After years of researching legends about these almost mythical beings, seeing them in person was both thrilling and strangely mundane. They were just people, different, yes, but recognizably people. The discussion was interrupted when an aide rushed in, skin pale with alarm. "Director, we have a situation. A collective battlecruiser has just entered orbit and is demanding the humans withdraw their fleet immediately." Director Vash's skin turned a shock white. "What? On whose authority?" "Central Command." "Sir, they're saying the local arrangement is overruled." Captain Morgan's expression remained calm, but her posture straightened. "It seems not everyone in your government supports this meeting." "I apologize for this confusion," Director Vash said, his skin now a mortified blue. "There appears to be a disagreement within our leadership. Please allow me to address this." As the director stepped away to communicate with the new arrival, Commander Martinez leaned closer to Captain Morgan. "We're receiving an alert from the horizon. The collective vessel is powering weapon systems." Morgan nodded slightly but didn't react otherwise. Instead, she turned to Counselor Jevanar. "Counselor, it would be unfortunate if our first official meeting ended in a military confrontation. Perhaps you could clarify whether your government actually wants diplomatic relations with Earth." The counselor's skin rippled with conflicting colors, embarrassment, concern, and anger cycling rapidly. "Captain, you must understand that your arrival was unexpected. Some elements within our government are more cautious than others." "Cautious is understandable," Morgan replied. "Hostile is another matter. My ships have maintained a peaceful stance despite your military positioning. We can continue that approach, but we need to know if we're welcome here." Keltoran watched the exchange with growing anxiety. After 15 years of studying humans as historical curiosities, he was now witnessing what could become a new chapter in that history, possibly a violent one. Everything he had learned suggested that humans, while capable of remarkable restraint, could be formidable when threatened. Director Vash returned, his skin now a determined green. "I've spoken with the commander of the battlecruiser. They've agreed to stand down temporarily while we continue discussions." He turned to Captain Morgan. "I apologize for this incident. It seems news of your arrival has created quite a stir throughout the collective." "I understand," Morgan said. "New situations often lead to confusion. But perhaps we should address the underlying question. Why does the collective have no official record of previous human contact, when evidence of those encounters clearly exists on multiple worlds?" The room fell silent. The question they had all been avoiding was finally on the table. Counselor Jevanar's skin turned a deep, troubled purple. "Captain Morgan, that is a complex matter involving aspects of our history that are sensitive. Perhaps we should establish basic diplomatic protocols before delving into such questions." "With respect, Counselor," Morgan replied, "I believe understanding that history is essential to establishing those protocols. Something happened between our peoples centuries ago. If we're moved forward, we need to understand what that was." As tension filled the room, Keltoran found himself wondering what would happen next. The legends were no longer just stories. They were sitting across the table, asking difficult questions, while collective battlecruisers circled overhead. The myths had returned, and they wanted answers. 2 weeks after the first tense meeting, the human embassy on Nix 7 was taking shape. The collective had reluctantly granted permission for a small diplomatic compound to be established near the research outpost. Earth had sent additional personnel and supplies, and what had begun as a simple landing zone was now a busy center of activity. Dr. Olivia Wright stood at the entrance to the newly constructed cultural center, watching Arvani visitors line up outside. Despite initial resistance from collective authorities, public curiosity about humans had proven impossible to contain. Citizens from across Nix 7 and even neighboring systems were arriving daily, eager to see these beings from their legends. "Another busy day," said Sam Cooper, approaching with crate of display materials. Sam was an engineer who had been assigned to help set up the embassy's infrastructure, but his friendly nature and patience had made him valuable for public relations as well. They're particularly interested in the Earth Foods display, Olivia noted. The concept of chocolate has caused quite a sensation. Sam laughed. Wait until they try coffee. I've been teaching the kitchen staff how to brew it properly. Director Vash tried some yesterday, and his skin turned a color I've never seen before. Olivia smiled. These small cultural exchanges were exactly what she had hoped for. While Captain Morgan and her diplomatic team dealt with the increasingly complicated political situation, Olivia focused on building person-to-person connections. The doors opened, and the first group of Arvani visitors entered. Their skin colors shifted through patterns of excitement and nervousness as they looked around. Olivia had learned to read their emotional displays better over the past 2 weeks. The Arvani might lack human facial expressions, but their color changes were just as revealing once you understood them. Welcome to the Earth Cultural Center, she greeted them. Today we'll be showing you images of our home planet and some examples of human art and music. Please feel free to ask questions at any time. As she led the tour, Olivia noticed one visitor staying slightly apart from the others. His skin maintained a thoughtful blue shade, and he studied each exhibit with careful attention. When the group moved to the next room, he approached her. Dr. Wright, I'm Professor Mallorin from the Historical Institute, he said quietly. I'd like to speak with you privately about something important. Something related to the missing records of human contact. Olivia kept her expression neutral, but felt a surge of interest. Of course, Professor. I can meet you after this tour concludes. He nodded, his skin briefly flashing a cautious yellow. Not here. There's a small cafe in the research district, less monitored, 2 hours from now. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Sam's voice rose above the sudden noise. Everyone stay calm. We need a medical kit here now. Olivia hurried toward the sound. Professor Mallorin momentarily forgotten. She found Sam kneeling beside an Arvani child who had collapsed near one of the displays. The child's skin was a sickly gray, and her breathing seemed labored. What happened? Olivia asked, kneeling beside them. Structure failure. Sam explained quickly. Pointing up, part of the ceiling display had broken loose and was hanging precariously. It started to fall, and I pulled her out of the way, but I think she hit her head when we fell. The child's parent was beside them, skin pale with fear. She has a respiratory condition. The shock might have triggered an attack. We need to get her to a medical facility. Sam looked at the worried parent, then at the growing crowd of onlookers. Without hesitation, he carefully lifted the child in his arms. Show me where to go, he said to the parent. It'll be faster if I carry her. The Arvani looked startled but nodded, leading the way toward the exit. Sam followed, moving quickly but smoothly, the small Arvani child cradled against his chest. Olivia turned to address the remaining visitors. I apologize for the interruption. One of our staff will continue the tour while I check on the situation. She glanced at Professor Mallorin, who nodded slightly to confirm their meeting was still on. Something was happening beneath the surface of this cultural exchange. The question of the missing human records remained unanswered, and Olivia intended to find out why. In the collective's temporary headquarters on Nix 7, Captain Lisa Morgan sat across from Counselor Jevenair and a newly arrived official introduced as Director Talvas of the Historical Archives. 2 weeks of diplomatic meetings had yielded progress on basic protocols, but continued evasion on the central mystery. Captain Morgan, Director Talvas began, her skin a formal shade of deep blue. I understand you've been inquiring about historical records of human contact with collective worlds. That's correct, Lisa replied. Given the abundant evidence of such contact found by Dr. Keltoran and others, the complete absence of official record seems deliberate. The director's color didn't change. After extensive searching, I've discovered that approximately 287 cycles ago, the collective experienced what we call the Great Data Migration. During this process, numerous historical records were corrupted or lost. It's likely that any documentation of human contact was among those casualties. Lisa kept her expression neutral, but she didn't believe this explanation for a moment. A curious coincidence that only records of humans were affected by this corruption. I didn't say only those records were affected, The director countered smoothly. Many historical documents were lost. And yet, folk tales and physical evidence on multiple worlds survived, Lisa noted. Convenient that only your official archives were impacted. Counselor Jevanar's skin flickered with discomfort. Captain, what exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything, Counselor. I'm directly stating that someone in the collective systematically erased all official evidence of human existence. What I want to know is why. The room fell silent. Finally, Director Talva spoke, her skin shifting to a somber gray. Captain, some matters in our history are sensitive. Some decisions were made by previous administrations that current leadership might view differently. What decisions? The director and counselor exchanged glances. Before either could respond, the door opened and General Vor entered, his skin a militant red. This meeting is concluded, he announced. Captain Morgan, you are requested to return to your embassy immediately. New security protocols are being implemented around the human compound. Lisa stood slowly. On whose authority? Central Command. The Continuity Directive has taken special interest in the human situation. The Continuity Directive? Lisa repeated. This was a term she hadn't heard before. A security council responsible for maintaining collective stability. General Vor explained with obvious satisfaction. They've determined that unrestricted human movement presents potential risks. Lisa looked at Counselor Jevanar, whose skin had paled considerably. Counselor, is this restriction approved by the full government? The directive has certain autonomous authorities in security matters. The counselor said carefully, I'm sure this is temporary while they complete their assessment. Lisa nodded, understanding the situation better than they realized. Earth's intelligence on the collective was limited, but sufficient to recognize a power struggle when she saw one. Very well. I'll return to the embassy, but I expect full clarification of these new protocols through proper diplomatic channels. As she left the building, Lisa activated her secure communicator. Morgan to Horizon. I need a full background check on something called the Continuity Directive, and alert all personnel to potential security changes around the embassy. Something's happening, and I don't think it's friendly. Professor Malrin was already waiting when Olivia arrived at the small cafe. He had chosen a corner table, far from other patrons, and his skin was an anxious yellow-green. Thank you for coming, he said as she sat down. I wasn't sure if you would after the incident at the cultural center. The child is fine, Olivia told him. Your medical staff were impressed by how quickly Sam got her treatment. Apparently, his quick action prevented a more serious episode. Yes, I heard. Your engineer is becoming quite the local hero. News of his strength and speed in carrying the child has spread quickly. It confirms many of our old stories about human physical capabilities. Olivia nodded. Sam was just doing what anyone would do. But you didn't ask to meet me to discuss that. You mentioned something about the missing records. The professor leaned closer, his voice dropping. I've spent my career studying ancient collective history. 3 years ago, I found references to humans in some pre-unification texts. When I tried to access related documents, I discovered they were restricted by something called the Continuity Directive. What is this directive? Olivia asked, remembering that Captain Morgan had mentioned investigating the same term. Officially, they're a security council that protects collective stability and cultural integrity. Unofficially, they control what information is available to collective citizens. They determine which aspects of history are taught and which are adjusted. They're the ones who erase humans from your records, Olivia realized. Yes, but it's not just humans. The director believes that certain influences are dangerous to what they call our natural development. They've altered or restricted information about several species and events that don't fit their vision of how collective civilization should evolve. Olivia frowned. That's disturbing, but it doesn't explain why they specifically targeted humans. I believe it's because humans were too influential, the professor said, his skin darkening with intensity. The records I found before they were restricted spoke of human visitors teaching new technologies, introducing cultural concepts, even helping during crises. The directive seems to believe that outside influences should be minimal. Human impact was anything but minimal. So they tried to erase us from history, Olivia said, only to have us show up on their doorstep centuries later. Exactly. And now they face a dilemma. Your presence contradicts the historical narrative they've carefully constructed. That makes you dangerous to them. Is that why security around our embassy is being increased? The professor's skin paled. They're restricting your compound? That's not good. The directive doesn't just control information. Dr. Wright. They have significant influence over military assets as well. Olivia felt a chill. What had begun as a diplomatic mission was increasingly feeling like something more precarious. What can you tell me about their capabilities? Not much. Their operations are highly secretive. But I can tell you this. They won't simply accept your presence here. If humans represent a challenge to their control of collective development, they'll take action to remove that challenge. You're saying they might attack us? I'm saying you should be prepared for anything. His skin shifted to a resolved blue. There are many of us in the collective who question the directive's authority to shape our history. Your arrival has already sparked demands for more information about these myths that suddenly appeared in our skies. People are beginning to ask questions. As if to emphasize his point, Olivia noticed several Arvani at nearby tables looking their way. Skin colors showing curiosity and interest. News of the humans had spread rapidly throughout the collective, and with it, questions about why these beings have been absent from official history. Thank you for this information, Olivia said. I need to report this to Captain Morgan immediately. Be careful, the professor warned. The directive has spent centuries building their influence. They won't surrender it easily. Olivia nodded and stood to leave. The simple diplomatic mission was becoming increasingly complex. Humans had gone from being myths to being threats, at least in the eyes of some powerful faction within the collective. How Captain Morgan would navigate this new reality remained to be seen. As she walked back toward the embassy, Olivia noticed increased collective security forces on the streets. Something was definitely happening. The stories were becoming reality, and not everyone was happy about it. 1 month into the human presence on Nix 7, the embassy compound had grown into a small but bustling center of activity. Despite increasing restrictions from collective authorities, public interest in humans had only intensified. Every day, crowds gathered at the security perimeter, hoping for glimpses of the visitors from Earth. Inside the compound's communication center, Captain Lisa Morgan studied the latest intelligence reports with a deepening frown. The situation was deteriorating faster than she had anticipated. The continuity directive has placed representatives on every major collective world, reported Nicole Ward, the diplomatic officer who had been investigating the mysterious organization. They appear to control information flow throughout the collective. Most citizens don't even realize how thoroughly their history has been curated. And now they're facing their worst nightmare, Lisa said. The living embodiment of the history they tried to erase. Commander Martinez entered the room, his expression grim. Captain, our ships are reporting increased scanner activity from collective vessels. They're mapping our defensive capabilities. Lisa nodded. The Horizon detected the same thing last night. They're preparing for something. She turned back to Nicole. What else have you learned about the directive? They were formed approximately 300 years ago, shortly after the period when humans had contact with various worlds. Their original stated purpose was to preserve cultural integrity within the newly forming collective. In practice, they became information gatekeepers, deciding which aspects of member species' histories would be preserved and which would be adjusted. And they decided humans were too influential, Lisa concluded. Exactly. From what we pieced together from various sources, human visitors made significant impacts on several worlds, teaching new technologies, introducing cultural concepts that changed societies. The directive saw this as contamination of natural development. So they erased us, Lisa said. And now we've shown up again, disrupting their carefully constructed narrative. They won't accept our presence, Martinez warned. The increased security, the scanning, they're building towards something. Lisa turned to the window, looking out at the Nix 7 landscape. In the months since their arrival, They had made remarkable progress in building relationships with ordinary collective citizens. The cultural center was popular, trade discussions had begun, and scientific exchanges were yielding benefits for both sides. But all of that was threatened by the directive's growing hostility. We need to get ahead of this, she decided. Nicole worked with Dr. Wright. Gather all the evidence we have about human contact with collective worlds and a directive suppression of that history. We need to make this public before they can move against us. That won't be easy, Nicole cautioned. They control the information channels. Then we'll find alternative channels. The truth about their historical revisionism needs to spread before they can silence us. As her officers left to implement her orders, Lisa contacted Horizon. This is Morgan. Place all ships on alert status. We may need to evacuate on short notice. The response was immediate. Understood, Captain. We're monitoring unusual energy readings from several collective military installations. Something's definitely happening. Lisa acknowledged the report and ended the transmission. She had hoped for a peaceful establishment of relations between Earth and the collective, but the continuity directive seemed determined to prevent that. The humans had returned from myth to reality, and now they might be forced to demonstrate just how real they could be. Dr. Keltoran hurried through the corridors of the research facility, his skin a troubled mix of orange and blue. The message from Dr. Wright had been urgent but vague, a request to meet privately with important new information. As he approached the designated meeting room, he noticed the increased security presence throughout the building. Collective guards stood at every intersection, their skin the uniform red of military alertness. Inside the small conference room, he found Dr. Wright waiting with Professor Malrin. The human woman smiled in greeting, but her expression was serious. "Thank you for coming, Dr. Keltoran," she said. "We don't have much time. The professor has been helping me uncover information about the continuity directive and their suppression of human history." "It's worse than we thought," Malrin said, his skin a pale, worried yellow. "The directive isn't just restricting information about humans. They've been secretly developing weapons based on technology they recovered from early human visitors." Keltoran's skin flashed with shock. "What? That can't be true. The collective has strict protocols about weapons development." "Protocols the directive ignores," Malrin replied. "They've been operating outside normal oversight for centuries. My contact in the historical archives have found evidence of research facilities where they reverse-engineered technology from a damaged human vessel that crashed nearly 300 years ago." Dr. Wright nodded. "We believe they've been developing these weapons as a contingency in case humans ever returned. And now we have." "But why?" Keltoran asked. "What threat do humans pose that would justify such measures?" "Control," Dr. Wright said simply. "From what we've learned, the directive was formed by individuals who believe that outside influences, particularly human influences, were too disruptive to their vision of how collective civilization should develop. They want to control the narrative, to guide evolution along their preferred path. And humans represented unpredictability," Malrin added. "Your species introduced ideas and technologies that changed societies in ways the directive couldn't control." Keltoran sank into a chair, his skin cycling through colors of distress. This goes against everything the collective stands for. We're supposed to be a union of diverse cultures, sharing knowledge and resources, not suppressing history and developing secret weapons." "Many would agree with you," Dr. Wright said. "That's why we need your help. We need to make this information public before the directive can act against us." "Act? You mean attack?" "We've detected increased military preparations," she confirmed. "Our ships are being scanned, and security around our embassy has tightened. The directive is planning something, and we need to expose them before they can implement it." Keltoran's skin settled into a resolved green. "What do you need me to do?" "We need to broadcast the truth throughout the collective," Dr. Wright explained. "Your research on human contact, combined with Professor's evidence of directive manipulation, could spark enough public reaction to check their power. But we need access to communication systems they don't control." "I might know a way," Keltoran said after a moment's thought. "The research network operates on separate channels from the main collective systems. It's designed for sharing scientific data, but it reaches every major academic institution across collective space. Perfect, Dr. Wright said with a smile. Can you get us access? Yes, but we'll need to move quickly. The directive has been placing restrictions on research communications as well. As they began planning their information release, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the facility. The lights dimmed, then switched to emergency mode. What's happening? Dr. Wright asked, rising to her feet. Keltoran moved to a communication panel and accessed the security feed. His skin paled to nearly white. Collective military forces are surrounding the human embassy. They've activated a containment field. They're making their move, Dr. Wright said grimly. We need to warn Captain Morgan. She tried her communicator, but got no response. They're jamming our signals. We need to get to the embassy. That won't be possible, Keltoran said, watching the security feeds. They've locked down the entire research district. No one in or out. Dr. Wright's expression hardened with determination. Then we need to implement our plan now. If we can't physically reach the embassy, we need to make sure the truth reaches the collective public. It might be the only way to prevent this situation from becoming a disaster. At the human embassy, Captain Morgan stood on the roof, watching as collective military vessels took up positions overhead. The containment field was visible as a slight shimmer in the air around the compound perimeter, effectively cutting them off from outside contact. All personnel are accounted for, Commander Martinez reported, joining her on the roof. 37 humans inside the compound. We've activated emergency protocols, and our security measures are in place. Any word from Dr. Wright? Lisa asked. No, Captain. She was at the research facility when communications were cut. We have to assume she's isolated there. Lisa nodded, considering their options. The Horizon and the rest of the human fleet remain in orbit, but the collective had positioned their own vessels to prevent any shuttle launches from reaching them. The embassy was effectively under siege. Captain, called Ben Reeves from nearby. We're picking up a transmission on the emergency frequency. It's from the Horizon. Lisa moved quickly to the communication station. Morgan here. What's your status? Captain, collective vessels have taken up offensive positions around our fleet. They're demanding we withdraw from the system immediately. Their weapons are powered and locked on our position. Do not engage, Lisa ordered. Maintain defensive posture only. We need time. Time for what, Captain? We're significantly outnumbered. Lisa looked out at the collective forces surrounding the embassy. Time for the truth to spread. Dr. Wright and Dr. Keltoran are working to expose the directive's manipulation of collective history. If they succeed, public opinion might force the directive to stand down. And if they don't succeed? Lisa's expression was grim but determined. Then we show the collective exactly why humans became legends in the first place. Below, at the compound perimeter, a group of collective officials had arrived. At their center stood General Vor, his skin the deep red of military authority. Captain Morgan, he called through an amplifier. By authority of the Continuity Directive, you and your personnel are ordered to surrender and prepare for deportation from collective space. Your unauthorized influence poses an unacceptable risk to our society. Lisa stepped to the edge of the roof, making herself visible to the general and his forces. We came in peace, offered friendship, and have abided by all diplomatic agreements. Your containment of our embassy violates those agreements. The agreements are nullified, General Vor declared. The directive has determined that human presence is disruptive to collective development. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences. Around the perimeter, beyond the military cordon, a crowd of collective citizens had gathered, watching the confrontation with skin colors, showing a mix of confusion, concern, and curiosity. Lisa noticed their presence and made a decision. General, she said clearly, her voice carrying to the onlookers, before you take action against us, you should know that the truth about human contact with the collective and about the directive systematic erasure of that history is being broadcast across your worlds as we speak. The general's skin flickered briefly with uncertainty before returning to its militant red. Your deceptions will not be heard. The directive controls all information channels. Are you certain about that? Lisa asked, "The myths have returned, General, and this time we won't be so easily erased from history." As she spoke, she noticed a ripple of color changes moving to the crowd of onlookers. Many were accessing personal devices, their skin shifting to shades of surprise and shock. Dr. Wright and Keltoran had succeeded in their broadcast. The truth was spreading. The standoff had reached its critical point. In orbit, human and collective ships faced each other with weapons ready. On the ground, the embassy remained surrounded. And throughout collective space, the carefully maintained fiction of history was unraveling as the truth about humans and the director's deception spread from world to world. The legends had not only returned, they had brought the truth with them. The standoff at the human embassy had lasted for 6 tense hours. As night fell on Nix 7, the collective military forces maintained their positions, the containment field glowing more visibly in the darkness. Inside the embassy compound, Captain Lisa Morgan and her team monitored the situation from their makeshift command center. "Status report," Lisa requested, studying the tactical display. "The Horizon reports that collective vessels are still in attack formation," Commander Martinez replied. "But they haven't made any aggressive moves in the last hour." "And the information broadcast?" Nicole Ward looked up from her communication station. "It's spreading faster than the directive can contain it. Dr. Wright and Dr. Keltoran did it. The research network carried their evidence to every major academic institution across collective space. From there, it's flowing into public channels." Lisa nodded, allowing herself a moment of cautious optimism. "What are we seeing in terms of public reaction?" "It's chaotic," Nicole admitted, "but we're tracking significant protests forming on at least 7 major collective worlds. Citizens are demanding answers about the suppressed history and the directive's actions." Sam Cooper entered the command center, his expression serious. "Captain, we have a problem with the containment field. It's affecting our power systems. If they don't shut it down soon, we'll lose life support in about 4 hours." Lisa frowned. This changed the timeline. They know that, of course. It's deliberate pressure. She turned to Martinez. "Options? We could attempt to disrupt the field generators, but that would be seen as an aggressive act," he replied. "It might give General Vor the excuse he's looking for to attack directly." "What about the Horizon?" Lisa asked. "Any chance they could extract us?" Martinez shook his head. "Not with the collective fleet in position. Any attempt to launch shuttles would trigger a response." Lisa considered their situation. The truth about the directive's manipulation was spreading, but not quickly enough to help their immediate predicament. They needed to buy more time. "Contact General Vor," she decided. "Tell him I want to discuss terms." The team looked surprised. "Terms of surrender?" Martinez asked. "No," Lisa replied firmly. "Terms of conversation. We need to keep him talking while public pressure builds. And I want to see how the directive responds now that their secrets are becoming public." In the research facility across the city, Dr. Olivia Wright and Dr. Keltoran worked frantically to maintain their information broadcast. The directive had begun attacking the research network, attempting to shut down communication nodes and block the spread of information. "They've cut off the Eastern Academic Hub," Keltoran reported, his skin a concentrated blue as he rerouted connections. "But the Western and Northern networks are still active. The information has already reached the central worlds. We need to keep it flowing as long as possible," Olivia said, adding new data packets to the transmission. "Every citizen who sees the truth is one more voice against the directive's actions." Professor Malrin burst into the room, his skin a pale yellow of alarm. "Security forces are on their way. Someone reported our activity." Olivia nodded grimly. "We expected that. Is the backup plan ready?" "Yes," the professor confirmed. "The student network is prepared. Once the research channels are cut, they'll continue spreading the information through personal devices and unofficial channels." Keltoran's skin rippled with determination. The young always find ways around official barriers. The directive doesn't understand how information truly flows in modern society. Olivia placed a hand on his shoulder, a human gesture of solidarity that the Arvani researcher had come to appreciate. "We've done everything we can here. Now we need to reach the embassy and join Captain Morgan. How? Malloran asked. The whole district is locked down. Keltoran's skin shifted to a slightly mischievous green. There are maintenance tunnels beneath the research facility. They were built during the original construction, before the directive security protocols were implemented. They don't appear on current maps, but I found references to them in historical archives. Where do they lead? Olivia asked. Not directly to the embassy, Keltoran admitted, but close enough that we might find a way through perimeter. As they gathered their essential equipment, the sound of approaching security forces echoed down the corridor. Olivia looked at her Arvani colleagues, seeing determination in their color shifts. Truth against power, she said. It's a battle as old as civilization itself. And one worth fighting, Keltor replied as he opened the hidden access panel that would lead them to the tunnels. Humans taught us that centuries ago. Some lessons even the directive couldn't fully erase. General Vor stood stiffly at the edge of the containment field, his skin tight, controlled red as he faced Captain Morgan. Behind him, his military staff maintained alert positions, while behind her, Commander Martinez and Nicole Ward flanked her protectively. Your request for negotiation is noted, the general said coldly, but there is nothing to discuss. The directive has ordered your removal from collective space. Your attempts to spread misinformation have only confirmed the danger you represent. Misinformation? Lisa asked calmly. Or inconvenient truth. The evidence being shared across your worlds right now comes from your own historical archives, General. Documents the directive tried to suppress, but didn't quite manage to destroy completely. The general's skin tightened further, deepening to a darker red. History is complex, Captain. The directive's role is to ensure that collective development proceeds along appropriate paths, without disruptive outside influences. And who decides what's appropriate? Lisa countered. A secret council that alters historical records and develops weapons behind the backs of your own people? For the first time, the general showed a flicker of uncertainty, his skin briefly shifting toward purple before he controlled it. You don't understand our society. Stability requires careful management of influences and information. I understand that your citizens are currently gathering in public spaces across 7 major worlds, demanding answers about the history you've hidden from them, Lisa said. The containment field around our embassy is failing, General. When it does, will you order your troops to fire on us? How will that look to those citizens? Before the general could respond, his communication device activated. His skin paled as he listened to the message, then shifted rapidly between colors of alarm and anger. What is it, General? Lisa asked, recognizing the signs of significant news. The Collective Council has called an emergency session, he said stiffly. They're questioning the directive's authority regarding the human situation. Lisa kept her expression neutral, but inwardly she felt a surge of hope. The public pressure was having an effect. Perhaps you should attend that session, General. It seems your leadership requires your input. The general's skin settled into a resolved dark orange. This isn't over, Captain. The directive has guided the collective for centuries. We won't be undermined by the return of a disruptive influence we thought we had removed from our history. History has a way of returning, General, Lisa replied, especially when you try to erase it. As the general departed with most of his staff, Lisa turned to her team. The council session buys us time, but the containment field is still active, and we're still surrounded by troops. We need to prepare for all possibilities. Captain, called Ben Reeves from the communication station. We're picking up a signal from Dr. Wright. She's with Dr. Keltoran, approaching the north perimeter. They've found a way through the underground maintenance tunnels. Lisa moved quickly to the tactical display. Direct them to the weak point we identified in the field generator array. If they can disable even one generator, it might create enough instability for us to bring down the entire field. As her team coordinated the approach, Lisa looked out at the Nix 7 night. Above, the human fleet remained in tense standoff with collective vessels. On the ground, military forces still surrounded the embassy. But across collective space, the truth was spreading, and with it, questions about the directive's right to control history and information. The balance was shifting, but the outcome remained uncertain. In the underground tunnels beneath Nix 7, Olivia followed Keltoran through the narrow passages. The ancient maintenance system was dusty and dark, clearly in use for decades. "We're approaching the northern perimeter," Keltoran whispered, his skin glowing faintly blue to provide light in the darkness. "There should be an access point just ahead that will put us near one of the field generators. Do you think you can disable it?" Olivia asked. "With your help, yes. These are based on standard collective technology. The key is to disrupt the synchronization with the other generators. If one fails, the whole network becomes unstable." As they reached the access point, Keltoran carefully pushed open the panel and peered out. They had emerged in a maintenance shed just outside the military perimeter, with a clear view of one of the field generator arrays. "Two guards," he whispered, "but they're facing outward, watching for external threats." Not expecting someone to come from inside the perimeter, Olivia noted. "Let's move quickly." They slipped from the tunnel and made their way toward the generator. Keltoran's knowledge of collective technology proved invaluable as they accessed the control panel and began rerouting critical systems. "Almost done," he murmured, his fingers working rapidly. This should create a cascade failure that... A shout interrupted him. One of the guards had spotted them and was raising his weapon. Before Olivia could react, Keltoran pushed her aside and positioned himself between her and the guard. His skin flashed a protective deep orange. "Wait!" he called the guard in their language. "I am Dr. Keltoran of the Research Division. This is official business." The guard hesitated, his weapon still raised. "Step away from the generator. The directive has ordered." "The directive has been lying to us," Keltoran interrupted, his skin now pulsing with emotional colors. "They've hidden our true history, manipulated our development. This human is not our enemy." As the guard wavered, uncertain, the final adjustments to the generator activated. The device hummed, then emitted a high-pitched whine before shutting down. Instantly, the containment field around that section of the perimeter flickered and failed. "Alert! Containment breach in Sector 7, the guard shouted into the communicator. Olivia grabbed Keltoran's arm. "Time to go." They ran toward the embassy compound as alarms blared across the perimeter. Behind them, confusion spread among the collective forces as the containment field became increasingly unstable, sections failing in sequence as the disruption spread through the network. On the horizon, orbiting above, the ship's sensors detected the containment field failure. "Captain Morgan's team is making their move," the acting commander reported. "The field is collapsing. And the collective vessels? They're maintaining position, but... Wait, we're receiving a transmission from the collective flagship. It's the Council, not the directive. They're requesting a direct communication channel with Earth authorities." The commander's expression showed surprise and cautious hope. "Patch it through to the embassy if their communications are back online. Captain Morgan needs to hear this." In the embassy compound, the sudden collapse of the containment field triggered immediate action. Captain Morgan deployed her security teams to secure the perimeter while establishing contact with Dr. Wright and Keltoran. "Captain," Nicole called urgently, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the collective council chambers. They're requesting to speak with you directly." Lisa moved to the communication station as the screen activated. A panel of Arvani officials appeared, their skin colors showing a mix of concern, formality, and what appeared to be embarrassment. "Captain Morgan," the central figure began, "I am High Counselor Jevanar. The full council has reviewed the evidence of the directive's actions regarding human history and their current operations against your embassy. We have concerns about how this situation has been handled." "As do we, Counselor," Lisa replied evenly. "The directive has been placed under review," the counselor continued. "Their military authority has been temporarily suspended pending a full investigation. We request an immediate end to hostilities and the restoration of diplomatic communications." Lisa allowed herself a small smile. "We would welcome that, Counselor. We came in peace, and our preference is to remain in peace." "There is much to discuss," Jevanar acknowledged, his skin shifting to a diplomatic blue, "including the history that was hidden from most of us." The Council would like to establish a joint commission to review the actual record of human collective contact and to address the directive's revisions. Earth would be pleased to participate in such a commission, Lisa agreed. Truth is a foundation of any meaningful relationship between our peoples. As the communication ended, Lisa turned to find Dr. Wright and Keltoran entering the command center, dusty but triumphant. Your broadcast worked, Lisa told them. The Council has suspended the directive's authority. We have a chance for real dialogue now. Keltoran's skin glowed with a bright, joyful blue. After centuries of being erased from our history, humans will take their rightful place in our understanding of the past. And in our future, Dr. Wright added with a smile. Outside, the collective military forces were withdrawing under new orders from the Council. The human embassy stood uncontained, open to a world around it once more. In orbit, the fleet maintained its position, a visible reminder that humans were no longer just stories. 2 weeks later, a memorial was dedicated on Nix 7, near the cave paintings that had first sparked Dr. Keltoran's research. It commemorated both the ancient human visitors whose influence had been erased and the modern human delegation that had returned to reclaim their place in history. At the dedication ceremony, Captain Morgan stood with Keltoran, watching as humans and Arvani mingled freely, exchanging ideas and building connections that the directive had once tried to prevent. They feared your influence, Keltoran said, his skin a thoughtful blue, perhaps with reason. In just a few weeks, you've changed our society more than the directive could have imagined. Change isn't something to be feared, Lisa replied. It's natural, inevitable. The directive's mistake was thinking they could control it by controlling information. A lesson we won't forget, Keltoran assured her. The Truth Commission has already begun restoring the historical records. The myths are becoming history again. Lisa smiled as she watched a group of Arvani children listening in fascination to Sam Cooper's stories about Earth. And new stories are being created. Better ones, I hope. High above, the human fleet remained in orbit, no longer mysterious visitors from legend, but partners in a new chapter of Galactic.